हेलो दोस्तों, बिगनर्स पॉइंट में आपका स्वागत है और अभी हम कर रहे हैं इकोनॉमिक्स। फ्रीक्वेंसी डायग्राम स्टार्ट करेंगे, इससे पहले का कंप्लीट कर लिया है। ठीक है। डाटा इन द फॉर्म ऑफ grouped frequency distributions are generally represented by frequency diagrams like histogram, frequency polygon, frequency curve, and ogive. Histogram. A histogram is two-dimensional diagram. It is a set of rectangles with base has the intervals between class boundaries along x-axis and with areas proportional to the class frequency 4.5 figure number. If the class कहाँ है 4.5, ये वाला, ये तो 4.4 है, 4.5 ये क्या होता है, ऐसा होता है हिस्टोग्राम ये। ठीक है। Are of equal width, which they generally are. The area of the rectangles are proportional to their respective frequencies. However, in some types of data, it is convenient at times necessary to use varying width of class intervals. For example, when tabulating deaths y age at death, it would be very meaningful as well as useful to have useful to have very short age intervals 0 1 2 years 0 7 28 days at the beginning when death rates are very high compared to death at most other higher age segments of the population. For graphical representations of such data, height for area of a rectangle is the quotient of height, hair frequency, and base width of the class interval. When the intervals are equal, that is, when all rectangles have the same base, area can conveniently be represented by the frequency of any interval for purpose of comparison. When bases vary in their width, the heights of rectangles are to be adjusted to yield comparable measurement. The answer in such a situation is frequency density, class frequency divided by width of the class interval instead of absolute frequency. Distribution of daily wage earners in a locality of a town. Number of wage earners daily earning 45 to 49, 2, 50 to 54, 3, 55 to 59, 5, 60 to 64, 3, 65 to 69, 6, 70 to 74, 7, 75 to 79, 12, 80 to 84, 13, 85 to 89, 9, 90 to 94, 7, 95 to 99, 6, 104, 4, 105 to 109, 2, 110 to 114, 3, 115 to 19, 3. Since histograms are rectangles, a line parallel to the baseline and of the same magnitude is to be drawn at a vertical distance equal to frequency or frequency density of the class interval. A histogram is never drawn since for continuous variables the lower class boundary of a class interval fuses with the upper class boundary of the previous interval. Equal or unequal, the rectangles are all adjacent and there is no open space between two consecutive rectangles if the classes are not continuous. They are first converted into continuous classes as discussed in chapter 3. Sometimes the common proportion between two adjacent rectangles figure 4.6 is omitted, giving a better impression of continuity. The resulting figure gives the impression of a double staircase. A histogram looks similar to a bar diagram, but there are more differences and then similarities between the two than it may appear at the first impression. The spacing and the width or the area of bars are all arbitrary. It is the height and not the width or the area of the bar that really matters. A single vertical line could have served the same purpose as a bar of same width. Moreover, in histogram no space is left between two rectangles, but in a bar diagram some space must be left between consecutive bars, except in multiple bars or component bar diagram. Although the bars have the same width, the width of a bar is unimportant for the purpose of comparison. The width in a histogram is as important as its height. We can have a bar diagram both for discrete and continuous variables. But histogram is drawn only for a continuous variable. Histogram also gives value of mode of the frequency distribution graphically as shown in figure 4.5 जो अभी देखा था ये 4.5 इसमें कंटिन्यूस शो कर रहा है मोड के फॉर्म में एंड x कोऑर्डिनेट ऑफ द डॉटेड वर्टिकल लाइन गिव्स द मोड ये क्या है मोड यानी कि एकदम बीच का इक्वल्स टू 80.60 frequency polygon. A frequency polygon is a plane bounded by straight lines, usually four or more lines. Frequency polygon is a is an alternative to histogram and is also derived from histogram itself. A frequency polygon can be fitted to a histogram for studying the shape of the curve. The simplest method of drawing a frequency polygon is to join the midpoints of the top side of the consecutive rectangles of the histogram. It leaves us with the two ends away from the baseline, denying the calculation of the area under the curve. The solution is to join the two endpoints thus obtained to the baseline at the mid-values of the two classes, with zero frequency immediately at each end of the distribution. Broken lines or dots may join the two ends with the baseline. Now the total area under the curve, like the area in the histogram, presented the total frequency or sample size. Frequency polygon is the most common method of presenting grouped frequency distribution. Both class boundaries and class marks can be used along the x-axis, the distances between two consecutive class marks being proportional equal to the width of the class intervals. Plotting of data becomes easier if the class marks fall on the heavy lines of the graph paper. No matter whether class boundaries or midpoints are used in the x-axis, frequencies as ordinates are always plotted against the midpoint of the class intervals. When all the points have been plotted in the graph, they are carefully joined by a series of short straight lines. Broken lines join midpoints of two intervals, one in the beginning and the other at the end, with the two ends of the plotted curve 4.6. When comparing two or more distribution plotted on the same axis, frequency polygon is likely to be more useful since the vertical and historical lines of two. ठीक है, ये हो गया फ्रीक्वेंसी कर्व, ये हो गई फ्रीक्वेंसी और स्मूथ कर्व डॉटेड वाला. और मोर डिस्ट्रीब्यूशंस में coincide in a histogram. Frequency curve. The frequency curve is obtained by drawing a smooth freehand curve passing through the points of the frequency polygon as closely as possible. It may not necessarily pass through all the points of the frequency polygon, but it passes through them as closely as possible. ये ogive is also called cumulative frequency curve, as there are two types of cumulative cumulative frequencies, for example less than type and more than type. Accordingly, there are two ogives for any grouped frequency distribution data. Here in place of simple frequencies has in the case of frequency polygon. Cumulative frequencies are plotted along y-axis against class limits of the frequency distribution. For less than ogive, the cumulative frequencies are plotted against the respective upper limits of the class intervals, whereas for more than ogives, the cumulative frequencies are plotted against the respective lower limits of the class interval. An interesting feature of the two ogives together is that their intersection point gives the median. Figure 4.8b of the frequency distribution has the shapes of the two ogives suggest. Less than ogive is never decreasing and more than ogive is never increasing. Arithmetic line graph. An arithmetic line graph is also called time series graph. In this graph, hour, day, date, week, month, year, etc. is plotted along x-axis and the value of the variable time series data along y-axis. A line graph by joining these plotted points. Thus, obtained is called arithmetic line graph, time series graph. It helps in understanding the trend, periodicity, etc. in a long-term time series data. Frequency distribution of marks obtained in mathematics. ये हो गया frequency distribution of marks obtained in mathematics. Number of students 6, 0 to 20, or less than cumulative frequency distribution of marks obtained in mathematics. Marks less than 20, less than cumulative frequency 6. More than cumulative frequency distribution of marks obtained in mathematics, more than 0, 64. ये पूरा डाटा के फॉर्म में इसी तरीके से है. Here you can see 4.9 that the for the period 1993 to 94 to 2013 to 14. The imports were more than the exports all through the period. You may notice the value of both exports and imports rising rapidly after 2001 to 2. Also, the gap between the two imports and exports has widened after 2001 to 2. Conclusion: by by now, you must have been able to learn how the data could be presented using various forms of presentation: textual, tabular, diagrammatic. You are now also able to make an appropriate choice of the form of data presentation as well as the type of diagram to be used for a given set of data. Thus, you can make presentation of data meaningful, comprehensive, and purposeful. ठीक है. Value of exports and imports of India rupees in 100 crores. 1993-94 698 export import 731. 1994-95 8 to 27 imports 900. ऐसे करके 27 13-14 तक का 13-14 तक का डाटा है ये. ठीक है. और इसके बाद आ जाता है रिकैप. Data, even voluminous data, speak meaningfully through presentation. For small data quantity, textual presentation serves the purpose better. For large quantity of data, tabular presentation helps in accommodating any volume of data for one or more variables. Tabulated data can be presented through diagrams which enable quicker comprehension of the facts presented otherwise. और इसी के साथ चैप्टर हो जाता है समाप्त. हम मिलेंगे अब चैप्टर अगले चैप्टर में.